Some stories aren't meant to be told, but this one must be. It's a story of silence, betrayal, and a promise that was never supposed to be broken. If you're ready for something unforgettable, subscribe and join our growing community of story lovers. And when it's over, tell me, who do you think was really at fault? The truth begins now.
The bass thrummed through my bones like a second heartbeat as I moved behind the bar, my hands working with the kind of muscle memory that comes from 3 years of perfecting the same dance. Pour, shake, strain, smile. Pour, shake, strain, smile. The ritual kept me grounded even when my mind threatened to drift toward dangerous territories I'd promised myself I'd abandoned. Midnight Velvet wasn't just any bar. It was the kind of place where secrets came to breathe in the dark, where the city's power players came to pretend they were just like everyone else, where the music was always loud enough to drown out conscience, but never quite loud enough to silence memory. I'd built this place into what it was, a sanctuary of controlled chaos, of calculated hedonism, of freedom within carefully drawn lines. The irony wasn't lost on me that I managed a bar owned by the one man I'd run from to find freedom. Sophia. Marco's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. He leaned across the polished mahogany, his smile easy despite the calculating look in his eyes. Marco had been one of Adam's men for as long as I'd known either of them, which meant he was dangerous in that quiet, efficient way that made smart people nervous. Table 7 needs another bottle of the Macallan, the good stuff. I nodded, already reaching for the top shelf where we kept the bottles that cost more than most people's monthly rent. My fingers wrapped around the familiar glass, and I felt that small thrill of power that came from controlling something valuable, even if it was just whiskey that would be gone by morning. The crowd tonight was the usual mix. Young professionals trying to look dangerous, actual dangerous people trying to look professional, and the tourists who'd somehow stumbled past our velvet rope and would have stories to tell for years about the night they drank in a place that technically didn't exist on any official city map. I loved it. Every messy, contradictory, beautifully chaotic second of it. "You're smiling," Jenna observed, sliding up beside me to grab fresh glasses. She was new, barely 3 weeks in, and still looked at the clientele with wide eyes that suggested she hadn't quite figured out what kind of establishment she was really working at. "Must be a good night." "Every night's a good night when you know what you're doing," I replied, letting just enough edge into my voice to remind her that authority here wasn't about volume. It was about certainty. I'd learned that from watching Adam, though I'd never tell him that. Some lessons from the past were useful even when you wanted nothing to do with the teacher. I moved through the bar with practiced grace, delivering the Macallan to table 7, where 3 men in expensive suits looked up at me with the kind of appreciation that would have made me uncomfortable once. Now, I just smiled, the one that said I saw exactly what they were thinking and found it mildly amusing, and returned to my domain behind the bar. The door opened, bringing with it a blast of October air that made the candles flicker across the room. I didn't look up immediately. Part of managing a place like this was knowing when to pay attention and when to let moments unfold naturally. But something made the air shift, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. When I finally raised my eyes, the world narrowed to a single point of absolute certainty. Adam Clark stood in the doorway like he owned the shadows themselves. And technically, I supposed he did. He owned this bar, the building it occupied, probably half the block it sat on, and a good portion of the city's underground operations that made places like Midnight Velvet possible. But what caught my breath wasn't the power he radiated. I'd always known that about him. It was the way his dark eyes found mine across the crowded room with the precision of a heat-seeking missile, the way his mouth tightened almost imperceptibly when he saw me, the way 3 years of distance evaporated in the space between one heartbeat and the next. He looked the same. That was the cruel joke of it. The same dark hair that probably cost more to maintain than it should. The same sharp jaw that had traced paths down my neck while I gasped his name, the same broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit like it had been designed by someone who understood exactly what kind of weapon the male form could be. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Dark, intense, and fixed on me with the kind of focus that used to make me feel like the only woman in any room. Now, it just made me acutely aware of how carefully I'd constructed the walls between who I'd been and who I'd become. I forced my hands to stay steady as I finished pouring the drink I'd been working on, forced my breathing to remain even, forced myself to remember that I was Sophia Miller, manager of the most successful underground bar in the city, not the woman who'd once fallen so hard for Adam Clark that she'd nearly lost herself in the process. Sophia. Marco appeared at my elbow again, his voice low. "Boss is here." "I noticed," I replied, proud of how level my voice sounded, as if my heart wasn't trying to claw its way out of my chest, as if I hadn't spent 3 years constructing an entire life specifically designed to avoid this exact moment. Adam moved through the crowd with the same fluid grace I remembered, people instinctively shifting out of his path without even seeming to register they were doing it. That was power. Not the kind you shouted about, but the kind that lived in your bones and radiated outward until the world bent around you. He reached the bar and settled onto one of the stools, with the casual ease of someone who knew exactly how much he intimidated everyone around him, and chose not to care. His eyes never left my face. "Sophia Miller," he said, and hearing my name in his voice again was like touching a live wire. "It's been a while. 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days, I replied before I could stop myself. Then, because showing weakness was never an option, I smiled. The dangerous one, the one that had made him crazy back when we were destroying each other. But who's counting? Something flickered in his dark eyes. Amusement? Desire? The old familiar dance of power that had always existed between us? Apparently you are. I'm good with numbers. I reached for a glass, needing something to do with my hands that wasn't reaching across the bar to see if his jaw still felt the same under my fingertips. What can I get you? I'm assuming you didn't come to one of your own establishments just to make small talk with the help. The help? He leaned forward slightly, and I caught that scent. Expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him that used to make me want to crawl inside his skin. Is that what you're calling yourself now? That's what I am now. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to be the first to look away. Manager of Midnight Velvet, employee of the month for the past 36 months running, which I realize is a bit redundant, but it looks good on paper. You've done well with the place. His eyes swept the bar, taking in the subtle improvements I'd made over the years, the lighting that made everyone look like they had secrets, the seating arrangements that encouraged intimacy without feeling cramped, the music selection that kept the energy high without overwhelming conversation. Revenue's up 40% since you took over. Of course he knew the exact numbers. Adam knew everything. It was simultaneously one of the things I'd loved about him, and one of the things that had made leaving necessary. I'm good at my job, I said simply. You're good at everything you do. The way he said it, low and intimate, made heat pool in my stomach. That was never in question. Before I could formulate a response that wouldn't reveal how much his presence was affecting me, Marco appeared at Adam's shoulder, leaning in to murmur something I couldn't hear over the music. Adam's expression didn't change, but I saw the slight tension that entered his shoulders. I need to handle something, he said, standing in one fluid movement. But we're not done, Sophia. Not even close. I didn't realize we'd started anything, I replied, though we both knew it was a lie. We'd started something 3 years ago that neither of us had ever finished, and his presence here tonight suggested the universe wasn't done forcing us to deal with it. He smiled, that slow, dangerous smile that had always preceded the moments when he'd kiss me like he was claiming territory. Keep telling yourself that. Then he was gone, disappearing into the private rooms at the back, where I knew he conducted business that had nothing to do with liquor licenses and everything to do with the empire he'd built in the city's shadows. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Holy shit, Jenna breathed beside me. That was Adam Clark. The Adam Clark. I've never seen him in person before. He's even more intense than the rumors suggest. The rumors don't know the half of it, I muttered, reaching for the bottle of vodka and pouring myself a shot before I could think better of it. I normally didn't drink while working, but Normal had just walked out of my life 3 years ago and apparently decided to make a dramatic reappearance. The rest of the night passed in a blur of drinks and forced smiles, and the constant awareness that Adam was somewhere in the building, conducting whatever business required his personal attention. I felt his presence like a weight, like gravity had shifted, and I was being pulled toward something I'd spent 3 years running from. At 2 a.m, I finally locked the doors behind the last stragglers and began the closing routine. The bar looked different in the quiet. Less seductive, more honest. Just wood and glass, and the lingering scent of expensive whiskey and cheaper perfume. You can head out, I told Jenna and the 2 other bartenders who'd worked tonight. I'll finish up here. They didn't argue. No one argued with me anymore. I'd earned that respect through 3 years of being consistently fair, occasionally ruthless, and never, ever showing vulnerability. Once they were gone, I let myself sag against the bar, pressing my palms flat against the cool wood. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror behind the bottles. Dark hair that I'd learned to wear loose again after Adam. Dark eyes that I'd learned to line with just enough makeup to look dangerous instead of fragile. Lips that I'd learned to paint red because it made me feel powerful. I looked like a woman who had her shit together. It was an impressive illusion. You've changed your hair. I didn't jump, didn't gasp, didn't give him the satisfaction of being startled, even though my heart immediately kicked into overdrive. Instead, I straightened slowly and turned to find Adam standing in the doorway to the private rooms. His jacket gone, and his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that I remembered with uncomfortable clarity. You've been watching me, I observed. Always. He said it without shame, without apology. Even when you thought you'd disappeared. The admission should have made me angry, should have made me feel violated. Instead, it made me feel seen in a way that was both terrifying and intoxicating. I didn't disappear, I corrected, moving to start wiping down the bar even though my hands weren't steady. I left. There's a difference. Is there? He crossed the room with that predatory grace, settling onto the same stool he'd occupied earlier. From where I stood, it felt pretty similar. From where you stood, I repeated, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Everything probably looked like it was about you. But some of us leave because we need to find ourselves. Not because we're making some grand statement about someone else. His jaw tightened. And did you? Find yourself? I looked up, meeting his dark eyes with all the certainty I'd cultivated over 3 years of building a life that was entirely mine. What do you think? The air between us crackled with everything we weren't saying. 3 years of silence, of unanswered questions, of a connection that had been so intense it had nearly consumed us both. It was all there, hanging between us like smoke. I think, he said slowly, his voice dropping to that low register that used to make me shiver, that you look more like yourself than you ever did when we were together. And I think that should make me happy for you. But it doesn't. But it makes me want you even more. The honesty of it stole my breath. This was always the thing about Adam. He never played games with what he wanted. He was dangerous, yes. Controlling, absolutely. But he was never dishonest about his desire. You can't just, I started, but he held up a hand. I'm not asking you for anything, Sophia. Not tonight. I'm just telling you the truth, because apparently, we're being honest now. He stood, and I hated that my body responded to his proximity, that every cell seemed to lean toward him like a flower toward the sun. You built something incredible here. You've thrived without me. I can see that. And I'm man enough to admit that part of me hates it even while the rest of me is proud as hell. I don't need your pride, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. No, he agreed. You don't need anything from me anymore. But want? That's a different question, isn't it? He was close enough now that I could see the faint scar along his jaw, the one he'd gotten in a fight I'd never asked about, because there were parts of his life I'd learned not to question. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could remember with perfect clarity what it felt like to be pressed against him. "Good night, Sophia," he said softly. And then he was moving past me, his shoulder brushing mine in a contact that sent electricity racing through my veins. I waited until I heard the back door close before I let myself breathe again. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, and every carefully constructed wall I'd built over 3 years felt like it had developed cracks. Adam Clark was back in my life. And God help me. I wasn't sure if I wanted to run again, or see what would happen if I finally stood still. The morning after Adam's reappearance, I woke up to find a gift box outside my apartment door. Not just any gift box. The kind wrapped in thick black paper with a silver ribbon that probably cost more than the contents. I stood there in my pajamas, coffee cup in hand, staring at it like it might contain a bomb. Knowing Adam, it very well could. Inside was a new espresso machine, the kind that cost thousands of dollars and came with a note in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. "Since you're still drinking that terrible coffee from the bodega on the corner, some things shouldn't change, but your caffeine intake should." I should have been angry. Should have sent it back. Should have done anything except plug it in and make myself the best damn espresso I'd had in 3 years, while cursing Adam Clark's name with every perfect sip. That was Monday. Tuesday brought a new sound system for the bar, state-of-the-art, professional grade, delivered and installed before I even arrived for my shift. The installation team had a work order signed by management and refused to leave until everything was perfectly calibrated to my specifications. Specifications I'd mentioned once, in passing, to Marco about 6 months ago. Wednesday, I found out that the lease on my apartment, which had been month to month since I moved in, had been purchased outright. Not just my lease, the entire building. And the new owner had made exactly one change to the tenant agreements. My rent was now $1 a month. I stormed into Midnight Velvet that night with murder in my eyes. "Where is he?" I demanded, slamming my hands on Marco's desk in the back office. Marco looked up from his laptop with the kind of calculated innocence that would have been convincing on anyone who wasn't one of Adam's top lieutenants. "Who?" "Don't play dumb. It's insulting to both of us." I crossed my arms. "Adam, where is he? Mr. Clark is currently... I don't care if he's currently negotiating world peace. Get him on the phone. Now." Marco's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. He said you'd probably react this way. Did he? How incredibly perceptive of him. I leaned forward. "Phone. Now." To his credit, Marco didn't argue. He simply picked up his phone, pressed a single button, and handed it to me. It rang twice before Adam's voice came through, smooth and infuriatingly calm. "I was wondering how long it would take you to call." "You bought my building," I said without preamble. "I bought several buildings this week. You'll have to be more specific." "The one I live in, you absolute..." I caught myself, glancing at Marco, who was very obviously pretending not to listen. "We need to talk, in person. I'm free now, if you can spare the time from managing my bar." The possessive pronoun wasn't lost on me. 1 hour, Midnight Velvet, private room 3. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. I said 1 hour. I heard you, but I'll be there in 30 minutes because that's how long it takes me to get there from where I am, and I've discovered I'm not particularly good at waiting when it comes to you. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there, Marco's phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air and trying to remember why letting Adam back into my life was a terrible idea. The list was long, detailed. I'd spent 3 years compiling it. But looking at it now, all I could think about was the way he'd looked at me 3 nights ago, like I was water and he'd been dying of thirst. "You okay, boss?" Marco asked, gently retrieving his phone. "Do I look okay?" "You look like a woman about to make either the best or worst decision of her life." "That's oddly specific." He shrugged. "I've worked for Mr. Clark for 15 years. You learn to recognize the signs." I wanted to ask what signs, what he'd seen, what Adam had said about me in the 3 years I'd been gone. But pride kept my mouth shut. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and headed for the bar to do what I did best, pretend everything was under control while the world shifted beneath my feet. Adam arrived in exactly 30 minutes. He walked through the bar like he owned it, which, technically, he did. But there was something different about his presence tonight. More purposeful, more focused, like he'd stopped pretending this was just a casual check-in on one of his properties. I met him at the entrance to the private rooms, my arms crossed and my best don't mess with me expression firmly in place. "Room 3, I said shortly. "We need to talk." "By all means." He gestured for me to lead the way, and I felt his gaze on me the entire walk down the hallway. It was a physical thing, his attention, like heat against my back. The private rooms at Midnight Velvet were designed for discretion. Soundproof walls, comfortable seating, dim lighting that made everything feel like a secret. Room 3 was my favorite. Intimate, without being claustrophobic, with a small bar setup and a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. I closed the door behind us and turned to find Adam already pouring 2 glasses of whiskey from the bar. He handed me one without asking if I wanted it. "So," he said, settling onto the leather sofa with the kind of casual grace that should be illegal. "You wanted to talk." "You bought my building." "I did. And my espresso machine." "Also true." "And the sound system for the bar." "Guilty as charged." He took a sip of his whiskey, watching me over the rim of the glass. "Is there a question in there somewhere, or are you just reciting a list of my recent purchases?" "The question," I said, working very hard to keep my voice level, "is why. Why did I buy your building? Because the previous owner was planning to sell it to a developer who would have tripled your rent and displaced half the tenants, most of whom are elderly and on fixed incomes. That stopped me. How did you... I make it my business to know things." He set down his glass. "Why the espresso machine? Because life's too short to drink terrible coffee, and you deserve better than what that bodega sells. And the sound system? Because you mentioned wanting one, and I could provide it." He leaned forward, his dark eyes holding mine. "Is any of this actually a problem, Sophia? Or are you angry because I did something nice for you, and you're not sure how to handle it?" "I'm angry," I said carefully. "Because you're trying to control my life again." "No." His voice went hard. "I'm trying to make your life easier. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're inserting yourself back into my world without asking if I want you there. Do you?" He stood, moving toward me with predatory intent. Want me there? I should have stepped back. Should have maintained distance. Should have done literally anything except stand there like prey watching a predator approach. "That's not the point," I managed. "That's exactly the point." He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You left because you thought I was controlling you, that I was taking away your freedom. But Sophia, The coffee machine? The sound system? The rent? Those aren't about control. They're about taking care of you because apparently, even after 3 years, I still can't stop myself from wanting to make your life better. You don't get to do that, I whispered. You don't get to just take care of me without asking. Why not? Because it makes it harder to remember why I left. The words hung between us, raw and honest, and more revealing than I'd intended. Adam's expression shifted, something fierce and possessive flashing across his face. Good, he said quietly. Because I've spent 3 years trying to forget you, Sophia, and it hasn't worked, not even a little bit. So if my taking care of you makes you remember what we had, I'm not even slightly sorry. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, grateful for the interruption, and froze at the message on the screen. Unknown number. Does he know yet? Or are you still playing pretend? We should talk. V. The blood drained from my face. I must have made some sound because Adam was immediately alert, his hand on my arm. What is it? I looked up at him, my heart racing for entirely different reasons now. When you said you make it your business to know things, what exactly do you know about my life over the past 3 years? His eyes narrowed. Everything that matters. Why? Because apparently I'm not the only one with secrets. I handed him my phone, watched his expression go from concern to cold fury in the space of a heartbeat. Who, he asked, his voice deadly quiet, is V? That, I said, taking back my phone, is exactly what I'd like to know. The silence that followed my question was the kind that precedes explosions. Adam's thumb moved across my phone screen, reading the message again, as if the words might change meaning with repetition. They didn't. When he finally looked up, his expression was carefully blank, which I'd learned years ago was far more dangerous than visible anger. How long has this been going on? His voice was controlled, precise. The voice he used when making decisions that ruined lives. First message was tonight. I took the phone back, my fingers brushing his in a contact that sent unwanted electricity up my arm. Right before I called you. Show me your other messages. All of them. Excuse me? Sophia. He stepped closer, and I caught that familiar scent again. The one that used to make me feel safe before I learned that safety with Adam came with strings attached. Someone is threatening you. That makes it my business. Everything is your business according to you, I shot back. But my phone, my messages, that's mine, Adam, private. Nothing is private when it comes to your safety. And there it is. I moved away, needing space to think. The real reason you came back, not because you missed me or wanted to see how I was doing, because you need to control the situation, manage the threat, maintain your precious order. That's not fair, isn't it? I spun to face him. 3 years ago, you wanted to know where I was every moment, who I talked to, where I went. You said it was about protecting me then, too. It was about protecting you. His composure cracked slightly. Do you have any idea how many people would love to get to me through someone I care about? How many enemies I've made? How dangerous it was for you to be seen with me. So you tried to put me in a cage and called it love. The words echoed in the soundproof room. Adam's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. Is that what you think it was? His voice dropped dangerously low. A cage? What else would you call it? But even as I said it, memories flooded back, uninvited, unwanted, unstoppable. The first time Adam had kissed me, I'd been dancing at a charity gala I had no business attending. A friend of a friend's +1 situation that had put me in a room full of the city's elite. I'd worn a dress I'd borrowed and shoes that were killing my feet, and I hadn't cared about any of it because the music was good, and I was alive and free. He'd watched me for an hour before approaching. I'd felt his gaze like a physical touch, had known exactly when he started moving toward me through the crowd. "You're trouble," were the first words Adam Clark ever said to me. "And you're used to people doing what you tell them," I'd replied, not backing down even though something in his dark eyes made my pulse race. "I'm guessing that's going to be a problem." He'd smiled, that slow, devastating smile. "I'm counting on it." We'd left together that night, ended up at some all-night diner where we'd talked until sunrise about everything and nothing. He'd been different then, or maybe I'd just seen what I wanted to see. Less controlled, more human. He'd laughed at my jokes, had been fascinated by my complete lack of filter, had looked at me like I was the most interesting thing he'd encountered in years. The first month had been perfect. He'd given me space, had never asked where I was going or who I was with, had seemed content to exist in whatever moments we carved out together. But then someone had followed me home from one of our dates, one of his rival's men, looking to find leverage. Adam had found out, had dealt with it in whatever way Adam dealt with things, and everything had changed. Suddenly there were bodyguards I hadn't asked for, restrictions on where I could go alone, questions about every friend, every plan, every moment I wasn't with him. "I'm keeping you safe," he'd insisted when I'd pushed back. "You're suffocating me," I'd countered. The fights had escalated. His need for control versus my need for freedom. His fear for my safety versus my refusal to live in fear. Until one night, after a particularly brutal argument, I'd looked at him and realized I was disappearing. That the woman who danced without caring, who watched, who laughed too loud, who lived like every moment mattered. She was fading under the weight of his protection. So I'd left. Packed a bag while he was handling business, written a note that said only, "I need to breathe," and walked away from the most intense relationship of my life. "Sophia." Adam's voice pulled me back to the present. He was closer now, though I hadn't seen him move. "Where did you go just now?" "The past." I met his gaze, remembering why I left. And I was right to go. Something flashed in his eyes, pain, quickly masked. "Even knowing what I know now, even understanding that my fear for your safety wasn't about controlling you? Your intentions don't matter when the result is the same." But my voice lacked conviction, because seeing him now, with 3 years of distance, I could recognize what I'd been too young to see then. He hadn't been trying to cage me. He'd been terrified of losing me. My phone buzzed again. Unknown. "TikTok, Sophia. Secrets have expiration dates. Want to tell him, or should I?" Adam's hand shot out, steady and certain, palm up. "Let me help. I don't need your help." "You needed it 3 years ago, too. That didn't stop me from trying." His dark eyes held mine. "The difference is, this time I'm asking, not demanding, not ordering. Asking. The distinction shouldn't have mattered, but it did." Slowly, I placed my phone in his hand. He read the new message, his expression darkening with each word. "What secret are they referring to?" "I don't know." It was the truth, which made it worse somehow. I can't think of anything that... Vincent Caruso. The name hit me like a physical blow. I must have flinched because Adam's entire demeanor shifted, going from controlled to lethal in a heartbeat. "Vincent Caruso," he repeated, softer now but no less dangerous. "What does he have on you?" "Nothing. I barely know him." "You're a terrible liar, Sophia. You always have been." He set the phone down carefully, deliberately. "Tell me what happened. It was after I left you." The words came out before I could stop them. 6 months later. I was still settling into the job at Midnight Velvet, still figuring out how to be on my own. He came to the bar a few times. Was charming, persistent, Said he knew you, that you'd worked together. Adam's hands clenched into fists. Did he hurt you? No. God, no. Nothing like that. I wrapped my arms around myself. He asked questions. About you. About your business. Where you kept certain records. Who you trusted. And I was angry enough and stupid enough that I answered a few before I realized what he was doing. Industrial espionage. Adam's voice was flat. He was using you to get information about my operations. I didn't tell him anything important, I said quickly. Just small things, stupid things. Your schedule, where you like to eat, who you met with. I stopped as soon as I figured it out, but now he has leverage. Adam turned away, running a hand through his hair in the first truly uncontrolled gesture I'd seen from him. Christ, Sophia. Do you have any idea how dangerous Vincent Caruso is? What he could do with even small pieces of information about me? I know. I've spent 2.5 years terrified he'd use it against you somehow. Against me? He spun back. I don't give a damn about me. I'm worried about what he'll do to you if he decides you're more valuable as a message than as an informant. The raw fear in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the controlled mob boss. This was the man who'd once held me after a nightmare, who'd made me laugh until I cried, who'd looked at me like I was precious and breakable and worth protecting from the entire world. So what do we do? I asked quietly. We? He moved closer, his hand coming up to cut my face with a gentleness that made my throat tight. There is no we in this, Sophia. There's me handling a threat to your safety, and you letting me do it without fighting me every step of the way. That sounds an awful lot like control again. That's protection. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I'm not asking you to give up your freedom. I'm asking you to trust me enough to let me keep you safe while you live it. And the difference is? The difference, he said, his dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that stole my breath, is that I learned my lesson the first time. I can't keep you by putting you in a cage, Sophia. All that does is guarantee you'll fly away the first chance you get. But I can stand between you and the things that want to hurt you. I can eliminate threats before they reach you. I can love you enough to let you be free while making damn sure that freedom doesn't get you killed. You can't... My voice broke. Adam, you can't just say things like that. Why not? It's the truth. He leaned his forehead against mine. I love you. I've loved you since you told me I was used to people doing what I say, and you were going to be a problem. I loved you when you left. I loved you through 3 years of silence. And I'll love you whether you choose to stay or run again. But this time, I'm asking you to stay, to let me prove that I can protect you without controlling you, that I can love you without suffocating you. My phone buzzed once more on the table behind us. Unknown. 72 hours, Sophia. Then I go public with what I know. Your choice how this plays out. Adam's jaw tightened against my forehead, but he didn't move away. 72 hours, he murmured. Plenty of time. For what? He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes, and the cold calculation I saw there was the Adam Clark the world feared. To remind Vincent Caruso why people don't threaten what's mine. I'm not yours, I whispered, but it lacked conviction. Aren't you? His smile was sharp and certain. Then why are you still here? Why haven't you run? Why are you letting me touch you when you could walk away? Because running hadn't worked the first time. Because 3 years without him had been longer than 3 lifetimes. Because the woman I'd become in his absence was strong enough now to stand beside him without losing herself. I hate you, I said instead. No, you don't. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. But you're welcome to keep pretending if it makes this easier. My phone went dark. Somewhere in the bar beyond this room, music thumped and people laughed, and life continued like the world wasn't shifting beneath my feet. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Okay, you have 72 hours to deal with Vincent Caruso. But Adam, this doesn't mean I'm yours. It means I'm giving you a chance to prove you've changed. That's all I'm asking for." He stepped back, the mob boss mask sliding back into place. "Now tell me everything you remember about your interactions with Caruso. Every detail, no matter how small." And as I began to talk, recounting conversations I'd tried to forget, I realized I'd just made a choice. Not to be Adam's. Not to surrender my hard-won freedom, but to see if maybe, just maybe, there was a way to be free and loved at the same time. Adam left Midnight Velvet at 4 a.m. with a list of everything I could remember about Vincent Caruso, and a promise that I'd hear from him within 24 hours. I didn't sleep. Instead, I stayed at the bar, cleaning things that were already clean, reorganizing bottles that were perfectly organized, and generally trying not to think about how easily I'd let Adam back into my life. The sun was rising when my phone rang. "Pack a bag," Adam said without preamble. "Enough for 3 days." "Excuse me?" "Vincent knows where you live, where you work, where you get coffee every morning at that place on 5th Street, the one with the terrible pastries you love anyway." His voice was matter-of-fact. "Until I've handled this, you're staying somewhere he can't find you." "And where exactly is that?" "With me." I should have argued, should have insisted I could take care of myself, should have done anything except ask, "When are you picking me up?" "I'm outside your building now." Of course he was. I found him leaning against a black Mercedes that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years, looking completely at ease despite the early hour. He was wearing jeans. I'd forgotten he owned jeans, and a dark Henley that emphasized shoulders I'd traced with my hands more times than I cared to remember. "You look tired," he observed as I approached with my hastily packed bag. "You look like you haven't slept either." "I haven't." He took my bag, loading it into the trunk with practiced efficiency. "I've been making calls, arranging things, ensuring that Vincent Caruso wakes up this morning to discover his world is significantly smaller than it was yesterday." "What does that mean?" "It means his primary income source mysteriously dried up around 2 a.m. His suppliers are suddenly unavailable. His protection payments aren't being honored, and his second-in-command just received a very generous offer to work for someone else." Adam opened the passenger door. "Get in. I'll explain the rest on the way." The car's interior smelled like leather, an expensive cologne, and Adam. I sank into the seat, simultaneously exhausted and wired with an adrenaline I couldn't quite shake. "Where are we going?" I asked as he pulled into traffic. "Somewhere safe." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting until we're there." He glanced over, and something in his expression softened. "Trust me, Sophia. I know that's asking a lot, but for the next 72 hours, I need you to trust me." I wanted to argue, to demand answers, to maintain the independence I'd fought so hard to build, but the exhaustion weighing on my bones made the fight seem less important than it had 12 hours ago. "Fine," I muttered, "but I'm not happy about it." "You're never happy about anything involving me making decisions for your safety." There was amusement in his voice. "It's one of your most consistent qualities. Consistency is a virtue. So is knowing when to let someone help you." We drove in silence for a while, the city giving way to suburbs and then to wooded areas I didn't recognize. Eventually, Adam turned onto a private road that wound through trees before emerging in front of a house that made me forget how to breathe. It wasn't ostentatious. Adam had never been about flash. But it was beautiful in that understated way that screamed money. Glass and stone and clean lines, positioned to overlook a lake that caught the morning sun like scattered diamonds. "This is yours?" I asked. "One of several properties, but this one's special." He parked and came around to open my door. This one nobody knows about except Marco and a handful of people I trust with my life. And now me. And now you. He grabbed my bag from the trunk. Come on, I'll show you around. The interior was just as stunning as the exterior. Open concept, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that managed to be both comfortable and clearly expensive. But what caught my attention was the small details. Books on the shelves that I recognized as favorites I'd mentioned years ago. A specific brand of coffee in the kitchen that I loved, but could rarely afford. Orchids on the dining table. My favorite flower. You did this for me, I said, running my fingers over a first edition of a book I'd talked about wanting to read someday. I did it for us. Adam set my bag down near the staircase. I bought this place about 6 months after you left. Told myself it was an investment property. But I spent the next 2.5 years making it into something you'd love, even though I wasn't sure you'd ever see it. The confession made my chest tight. Adam, your room is upstairs, second door on the left. He cut me off, perhaps sensing I was about to say something neither of us was ready for. Guest bathroom is attached. There's a closet with some clothes that should fit you. I had someone pick them up based on your current size. You had someone... I stopped. Of course you did, because you know my size. I know everything about you, Sophia. His dark eyes held mine. I always have. It should have creeped me out, should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being known in a way I'd never experienced with anyone else. I need to shower, I said, needing distance to process the emotions swirling through me, and sleep, and possibly drink an entire bottle of wine. There's wine in the cellar. Help yourself. He moved toward the kitchen. I'll make breakfast when you wake up. We can talk about next steps then. I was halfway up the stairs when his voice stopped me. Sophia? I looked back. Thank you, he said quietly, for trusting me enough to come here. I haven't decided if I trust you yet, I replied, but I'm too tired to run, so consider this a tactical retreat rather than surrender. His smile was small but genuine. I'll take what I can get. The bedroom was perfect. Large enough to feel spacious, but not so large it was impersonal. The bed was massive, covered in soft gray linens that looked like clouds. The attached bathroom had a shower with multiple heads and a tub deep enough to swim in. I stood under water hot enough to turn my skin pink, letting it wash away the exhaustion and fear and confusion of the past 24 hours. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything I owned, I found clothes laid out on the bed. Not the outfit from the closet, something else. One of Adam's t-shirts and a pair of his sweatpants. I shouldn't have put them on. Should have chosen something from the mysteriously well-stocked closet instead. But the fabric smelled like him, and I was tired enough to allow myself the comfort even if I'd regret it later. Sleep claimed me the moment my head hit the pillow. I woke to afternoon sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover and the smell of something cooking downstairs. My phone showed I'd slept for 6 hours. There were no new messages from Vincent Caruso. There was, however, a text from Adam. Lunch is ready when you are. No rush. I found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, and an apron tied around his waist that should have looked ridiculous, but somehow didn't. He was plating what looked like an omelet with the kind of focus most people reserved for diffusing bombs. You cook? I asked from the doorway. He looked up, and something heated flashed in his eyes as he took in the sight of me wearing his clothes. I have many skills you never discovered. That sounds vaguely threatening. That sounds like a promise. He gestured to the island where 2 plates waited. Sit, eat, then we need to talk about what happens next. The omelet was perfect. Of course it was. Adam didn't do anything halfway. Vincent called me this morning, he said after a few minutes of silence. Wanted to negotiate. Negotiate what? The return of his business operations in exchange for leaving you alone. My fork clattered against the plate. You didn't. I told him to go to hell. Adam's voice was calm. Then I reminded him that I could make things significantly worse if he continued to be a problem. He has 48 hours to leave the city. If he's still here after that, I stopped being polite. What does not being polite look like? You don't want to know. He was right. I didn't. But I also couldn't help being impressed by the efficiency with which he'd neutralized a threat that had been hanging over my head for years. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. We still have the actual secret to deal with. What secret? Adam set down his fork, his dark eyes serious. The one Vincent thinks he knows. The one he's been holding over you. Sophia, what information did you actually give him about me? I told him last night, but now, in the clear light of day, I could see he wanted more. Needed to understand exactly what Vincent might know. Meeting times, locations of restaurants you frequented, names of people you did business with, though I didn't know they were business at the time. I thought they were friends. I met his gaze. I told him about the warehouse on the east side, the one you used for storage. Adam went very still. What warehouse? The one with the green door, near the docks? When his expression didn't change, fear spiked through me. Adam, what was in that warehouse? Nothing anymore. His voice was carefully controlled. I moved everything 6 months ago. But if Vincent knew about it when it was operational... He stood, pulling out his phone. Excuse me. I need to make a call. He disappeared into another room, leaving me alone with my omelet and the dawning realization that I'd given Vincent Caruso information that could have destroyed Adam's empire if used correctly. When he returned 20 minutes later, his expression was grim. How bad? I asked. Manageable. But it explains a few things that happened 2 years ago that I couldn't account for. He sat back down, reaching across the table to take my hand. Sophia, I need you to understand something. What you told Vincent. It wasn't your fault. He manipulated you, used your anger at me against you. That's what people like him do. But I still told him. Yes, and I'm still handling it. That's what people like me do. His thumb traced circles on my palm. But going forward, I need you to promise me something. What? That if someone ever approaches you about me again, you come to me first, no matter how angry you are, no matter what we're fighting about. You come to me and we handle it together. That sounds like you're planning on us fighting a lot in the future. His smile was slow and devastating. Oh, Sophia, we're going to fight constantly. It's part of our dynamic. The question is whether we fight as enemies or as partners. And which are we now? He stood, pulling me up with him until we were standing close enough that I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. That depends. Are you still planning to run the first chance you get? Are you still planning to control every aspect of my life? I'm planning, he said, his hand coming up to cup my face, to love you so completely that you never want to run. I'm planning to give you every freedom you've ever wanted while making sure you're safe enough to enjoy it. I'm planning to prove that you can be mine without losing yourself. Is that control? Or is that partnership? It's terrifying, I whispered. Good. His thumb traced my lower lip. That means it matters. He was going to kiss me. I could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way his body angled toward mine. And God help me, I wanted him to. Wanted to remember what it felt like to be claimed by Adam Clark. Wanted to see if the kiss would still set me on fire after 3 years of absence. My phone rang. We both froze. I pulled it from my pocket, expecting Vincent. Instead, it was a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. Answer it, Adam said, his expression hardening. On speaker. I did. Sophia Miller? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes? My name is Detective Sarah Chen. I'm with the Organized Crime Unit. I need to ask you some questions about Vincent Caruso and Adam Clark. How soon can you come to the station? Adam's eyes met mine, and in them, I saw calculation, fury, and something that might have been admiration. Well, he murmured, this just got interesting. I'm actually with a client right now, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Can this wait until tomorrow? Adam's hand tightened on my waist, a warning or encouragement. I couldn't tell. This is regarding an ongoing investigation, Ms. Miller. The sooner we speak, the better for everyone involved. Detective Chen's tone suggested this wasn't a request. I can send a car to pick you up if transportation is an issue. That won't be necessary. I kept my eyes locked on Adam's, watching his expression shift through calculations I couldn't follow. I can be there in 2 hours. Make it 1. And Ms. Miller? Come alone. The line went dead. Well, I said, setting my phone down carefully, that's not ominous at all. Adam was already moving, pulling his own phone from his pocket and typing rapidly. Marco needs to know about this, and I need to make some calls before you go anywhere near that police station. Before I caught his arm. Adam, she said to come alone. And you're actually considering it? He spun to face me, and the carefully controlled mob boss was gone, replaced by something rawer, more dangerous. Sophia, this is Vincent's play. He's using the police to apply pressure, to separate you from me so he can... So he can what? The police are the police. He can't touch me there. You still don't understand how this works, do you? He moved closer, his hands framing my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. Vincent doesn't need to touch you physically to hurt you. He just needs to get you on record talking about me, about my business, about anything that can be used later. The Organized Crime Unit doesn't call random bar managers unless they think those managers have information worth trading. I don't have information worth trading. You have 3 years of living in my world, working at my establishment, and... He paused, his jaw tightening. A history with me that makes you exactly the kind of witness they'd love to flip. The realization hit me like ice water. They want me to testify against you. They want you to give them enough to build a case. Vincent must have fed them something, enough to make them think you're vulnerable, angry, willing to cooperate. His thumbs traced my cheekbones with devastating gentleness. Are you angry enough to destroy me? 3 years ago, maybe I would have been. 3 years ago, I'd left convinced that Adam Clark was a prison I needed to escape. But now, looking into his dark eyes and seeing genuine fear, not for himself, but for what I might do, I realized the truth. I'd never wanted to destroy him. I just wanted to save myself. No, I said quietly. I'm not going to testify against you, Adam. But I am going to that police station, and I'm going alone like they asked. Sophia, listen to me. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes properly. If I don't show up, or if I show up with lawyers and bodyguards, it confirms whatever Vincent told them. That I'm under your control. That I'm not a reliable witness because I'm too scared or too compromised to tell the truth. But if I go alone, if I answer their questions honestly, his voice went sharp. And what exactly will you tell them honestly, Sophia? That you work at a bar I own? That we have a history? That you've seen things, heard things, know things about my operations? I'll tell them I'm the manager of Midnight Velvet, that I've never been involved in your business dealings, that whatever Vincent Caruso told them is a lie meant to manipulate both of us. I caught his hands, holding them between us. And I'll tell them that I'm not interested in cooperating with their investigation, because I have nothing to cooperate with. They won't believe you. Then that's their problem, not ours. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of trust. You said hours. Don't read too much into it. I'm just tired of being a pawn in Vincent's game. But even as I said it, I knew it was more than that. Somewhere between the coffee machine and the lake house and standing in his kitchen wearing his clothes, I'd stopped thinking of Adam's problems as separate from my own. He studied my face like he was trying to memorize it. If you do this, there are rules. Of course there are. You don't answer questions about my associates. You don't speculate about my business operations. You don't offer information they don't specifically ask for. His voice was firm. And if at any point they threaten you, offer you a deal, or suggest you need protection from me, you walk out immediately and call Marco. Not me, Marco. His number's already in your phone under M. When did you... This morning while you were sleeping. He had the grace to look slightly sheepish. I also installed a tracking app. Before you get angry, it's for emergencies only, and you can turn it off whenever you want. The password is your birthday. I should have been furious. Should have thrown his paranoid security measures back in his face. Instead, I found myself oddly touched by the fact that he'd given me the ability to disable it. Anything else? I asked. Yes. He pulled me closer, until our bodies were flush and I could feel his heart beating against mine. Don't trust Detective Chen just because she's a cop. Vincent has people everywhere, including in law enforcement. Whatever she tells you, whatever she promises, remember that her job is to build a case, not to protect you. I thought that was your job. It is. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back. Which is why I'm asking you, one more time, to let me send someone with you. Not to speak for you, just to be there, to make sure you're safe. The please was unspoken, but present in every line of his body, every note of his voice. Adam Clark, who commanded an empire built on fear and respect, was asking permission to protect me. Okay, I heard myself say. But they wait outside. I go into the interview alone. Relief flooded his expression. Deal. He kissed me then. Not the gentle, questioning kiss I'd expected, but something fierce and possessive and absolutely claiming. His mouth moved over mine like he was staking a claim, like he was reminding me of everything we'd been and could be again. I kissed him back with equal intensity, my hands fisting in his shirt, my body pressing against his with a desperation I'd spent 3 years denying. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Come back to me, he murmured. After the police station, after whatever Vincent has planned, after all of this is over, come back to me. I'm not going anywhere yet, but you will. His eyes held mine. Eventually, you'll have to decide if this, us, is worth the danger, worth the complications, worth binding yourself to a man who lives in shadows. Adam, I know what I'm asking, Sophia. I know what loving me costs. His hand cupped my face. I just need you to know that I'd pay any price to keep you, even the price of letting you go if that's what you need. The confession stole my breath. This was what I'd needed 3 years ago. The acknowledgement that loving him came with costs, that freedom and safety weren't always compatible, that sometimes the greatest act of love was letting someone choose their own path. We should go, I said, because the alternative was to stay in this kitchen and make promises neither of us was ready to keep. I don't want to be late. The drive to the police station was tense and silent. Adam sat in the back of the Mercedes with me, his hand holding mine like he was afraid I'd vanish if he let go. Marco drove with his usual efficient calm, but I could see his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds, checking on us. We arrived with 10 minutes to spare. The station was exactly what I'd expected. Institutional gray walls, harsh fluorescent lighting, the smell of bad coffee and bureaucracy. "I'll be right here," Adam said as I reached for the door handle. "The entire time, if you need me." "I know." I squeezed his hand once before letting go. "I'll be fine." Detective Chen was waiting in the lobby. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of every tough female cop I'd ever seen on TV. "Ms. Miller, thank you for coming." She extended her hand. "If you'll follow me." The interview room was small and windowless, with a metal table bolted to the floor and chairs that looked deliberately uncomfortable. A camera blinked red in the corner. "For the record," Detective Chen said as we sat, "you're not under arrest. You're here voluntarily to answer questions related to an ongoing investigation. You're free to leave at any time. Do you understand?" "I understand. Do you want a lawyer present?" "No." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "You're sure? Given your relationship with Adam Clark?" "I don't have a relationship with Adam Clark," I interrupted. "I work at a bar he owns. That's the extent of our connection." "Is it?" She opened a folder, sliding a photograph across the table. It showed me and Adam at the lake house this morning, visible through the windows. My stomach dropped. "We've been surveilling Mr. Clark for 6 months, Ms. Miller, which means we've been watching you for the past 24 hours. So let's try this again. What is your relationship with Adam Clark?" I looked at the photo, at the evidence of Adam's arms around me, his face buried in my hair, the intimacy of the moment captured and weaponized. And I realized Vincent Caruso had played us perfectly. "I want to call my lawyer," I said quietly. Detective Chen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Smart girl. We'll wait." I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed the number Adam had programmed under M. Marco answered on the first ring. "Problem?" "They've been watching the lake house," I said. "They have photos. We're coming in. Don't say another word until we get there." The line went dead. Detective Chen leaned back in her chair, studying me with professional interest. "Vincent Caruso warned us you'd lawyer up the moment things got difficult. Said Adam Clark has too much control over you to let you cooperate." She paused. "He also said you'd be wearing Mr. Clark's clothes when we brought you in. Looks like he was right about that, too." I looked down at Adam's t-shirt, visible under my jacket, and felt the trap close around us both. Outside, I could hear raised voices. Adam's, controlled but deadly. Marco's, calm and legal. And Detective Chen's partner, trying to keep them from storming the interview room. "Last chance, Ms. Miller," Detective Chen said. "Talk to us now. Help us build a case against the people really running this city's criminal enterprises, and we can offer you protection. Real protection, not the kind that comes with strings attached." Through the window in the door, I could see Adam. His eyes found mine, and in them, I saw everything. Fear, fury, and absolute trust that I'd make the right choice. The question was, what was the right choice? "I'd like to tell you a story, Detective Chen," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "About a woman who spent 3 years building a life on her own terms, who took a failing bar and turned it into the most profitable establishment in its category. Who did it without help, without handouts, without anyone controlling her choices. Ms. Miller, I really think you should wait for your lawyer. That woman," I continued, "learned that independence isn't about being alone. It's about choosing who stands beside you. And she learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let someone love you without losing yourself in the process." Detective Chen's expression shifted. "That's very poetic. It's also not an answer to my questions about Adam Clark's criminal activities. Because I don't have answers to those questions." I met her gaze steadily. "I manage a bar. I serve drinks. I handle inventory and staff schedules and customer complaints. What Adam Clark does outside of Midnight Velvet isn't my business, and frankly, I'm not interested in making it my business. Even though you're sleeping with him? Even though I'm in love with him, I corrected, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. Which, last I checked, isn't illegal. Neither is wearing his clothes or staying at his house or any of the other circumstantial evidence Vincent Caruso convinced you was proof of criminal conspiracy. Vincent Caruso is a credible witness. Vincent Caruso is a manipulative bastard who used me to try to hurt Adam 2 years ago and is trying to use your investigation to finish what he started. I stood, done with playing defense. And I'm done being anyone's pawn. So unless you're charging me with something, I'm leaving. Sit down, Ms. Miller. Am I under arrest? Detective Chen's jaw tightened. No. Then I'm leaving. When my lawyer arrives, direct him to the lobby. I walked to the door, half expecting her to stop me. She didn't. Instead, she said quietly, "He's going to destroy you, you know. Men like Adam Clark, they don't love people. They own them." I looked back over my shoulder. Maybe men like Adam Clark just need someone brave enough to love them without being owned. I guess we'll find out. The hallway was chaos. Adam stood nose to nose with a detective twice his size, his voice low and lethal. Marco had positioned himself strategically between Adam and 3 other officers, his lawyer face firmly in place. And there, standing near the precinct entrance looking smug and satisfied, was Vincent Caruso. Our eyes met across the crowded hallway. He smiled. Something in me snapped. I walked straight toward him, ignoring Adam's sharp call of my name, ignoring Marco's attempt to intercept, ignoring every rational thought that said confronting Vincent Caruso in a police station was a terrible idea. "You must be so proud of yourself," I said when I reached him. "Setting me up, feeding lies to the police, trying to use me to destroy Adam. Very clever." "I didn't lie," Vincent replied smoothly. "I told them exactly what you told me 2 years ago. It's not my fault you were indiscreet about your boyfriend's business operations. Ex-boyfriend at the time, and you manipulated me into trusting you. I made you feel seen, made you feel like someone understood your frustration." His smile widened. "Is it my fault you were so eager to talk about Adam Clark that you didn't notice I was taking notes?" Behind me, I heard movement. Felt Adam's presence like heat at my back. But he didn't touch me, didn't intervene. He was letting me handle this my way. "You want to know what I told the detective in there?" I asked Vincent. "I told her you're full of shit, that whatever information you think you have is 2 years old, filtered through your manipulation, and completely useless for building any kind of case. I told her I'm not cooperating with her investigation because I have nothing to cooperate with." Vincent's smile faltered. "You're lying." "Am I? Or did you overplay your hand by assuming I'd be so desperate to get away from Adam that I'd burn his entire world down to do it?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You don't know anything about what Adam and I have, Vincent. You don't understand that love and freedom aren't mutually exclusive. And you definitely don't understand that I'd rather stand beside Adam in his darkness than spend another second in your mediocre light." "You'll regret this," Vincent said, his mask slipping to show real anger. "When he tightens the leash, when you realize you've traded one prison for another." "The only person going to prison," Adam's voice cut in, cold and certain, "is you, Vincent, that federal warrant for tax evasion. The one my people made sure was fast-tracked. It's being executed right now at your office." As if on cue, Vincent's phone rang. He pulled it out with shaking hands, looked at the screen, and went pale. "You son of a bitch," he breathed. "I told you not to threaten what's mine." Adam's hand settled on my waist, possessive and protective in equal measure. "Did you think I wouldn't have contingencies? That I'd just let you use Sophia to hurt me without consequences? The police will be very interested in your financial records once the feds are done with them. I believe there are several shell corporations that link directly to the organized crime Detective Chen is investigating. Funny how these things work out. Vincent looked between us, calculation and fear warring in his expression. Then he turned and walked quickly toward the exit, his phone pressed to his ear, his confidence evaporating with every step. That, I said as we watched him go, was extremely satisfying. You called me your boyfriend. Adam's voice held barely suppressed amusement. In front of the police. On camera. I called you my ex-boyfriend. There's a difference. Is there? He turned me to face him, right there in the middle of the police station with Detective Chen watching from her office doorway, and Marco trying very hard not to smile. Because it sounded an awful lot like you were claiming me, Sophia Miller. Maybe I was. I reached up, my hand cupping his jaw. Someone recently told me that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself, that you can be free and loved at the same time. I'm choosing to believe him. His eyes darkened with an emotion that made my breath catch. And if he's wrong, if loving him does cost you pieces of yourself, then I'll tell him to back off, and I'll trust that he loves me enough to listen. I smiled. Growth, Adam. We're both capable of it. Are we? But he was smiling too, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. I love you, Sophia. I never stopped, not for 1 second of the past 3 years. I know. I pulled his mouth down to mine, kissing him in full view of the organized crime unit, the uniformed officers, and anyone else who cared to watch. I love you too. Even when you're overbearing and controlling and putting tracking apps on my phone. Which you haven't disabled yet, he murmured against my lips. Which I haven't disabled yet, I agreed. Because apparently, I'm learning to choose my battles. We should go, Marco said from behind us, his tone suggesting he'd been trying to get our attention for a while. Before Detective Chen decides to arrest you both for public indecency. Adam pulled back with obvious reluctance. He has a point. He usually does. I laced my fingers through Adam's. Take me home. Which home? The apartment? The lake house? The penthouse downtown? Whichever one has you in it. I squeezed his hand. That's home now. The ride back to the lake house was different than the morning's trip. Adam's hand never left mine, his thumb tracing patterns on my skin that spoke of promises and possibilities. Marco drove with his usual efficiency, but I caught him smiling in the rearview mirror more than once. So what happens now? I asked as the city gave way to trees. With Vincent, with the police, with all of it. Vincent will be busy with federal prosecutors for the foreseeable future, Adam replied. The police investigation will quietly disappear once they realize their primary witness is compromised. And we... He paused, his dark eyes holding mine. We figure out what comes next. Together. Together, I repeated. I like the sound of that. Good. Because I have plans, Sophia. Plans that involve you staying. Really staying this time. What kind of plans? His smile was slow and devastating. The kind where I prove every single day that you made the right choice. Where I give you every freedom you've ever wanted while making sure you're protected enough to enjoy it. Where we build something unbreakable. That's a lot of plans. I'm a man who thinks long term. He pulled me closer until I was practically in his lap. And my long-term plans have featured you since the moment you told me I was trouble and danced away before I could respond. I told you that you were used to people doing what you say, I corrected. You were the one who called me trouble. Because you are trouble. His hand slid into my hair. The best kind. The kind I never want to be free of. Good. I kissed him again, softer this time. Because I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Not ever. Promise? Promise. And I meant it. Not because Adam had convinced me or controlled me or trapped me, but because somewhere between running away and running back, I'd learned the truth. Freedom wasn't about being alone. It was about choosing who you stood beside. And I chose Adam Clark. With all his darkness, all his protection, all his fierce possessive love. I chose us. 3 months later, I stood behind the bar at Midnight Velvet, watching Adam conduct business in the private rooms with the same efficiency he brought to everything. But now, when he emerged, his eyes found mine immediately. And when the bar closed, he didn't go back to one of his many properties alone. He came home. To me. We fought, of course, about boundaries and safety and how many bodyguards were really necessary for a simple grocery run. But we also loved, fiercely, completely, with an honesty we'd never managed the first time around. Because this time, we weren't trying to cage or escape each other. We were just choosing, every single day, to be free together. And that made all the difference.